Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith. Today, I am so happy to bring you our guest. We're talking with Judy Gaman, CEO at Executive Medicine of Texas. Executive Medicine is a leader in preventative and proactive medicine. She's the host of Stay Young America podcast, and she's authored 7 books. She can also be heard on Fox News Radio as their healthy living expert. Welcome, Judy. I'm excited to talk with you.
I'm excited to be on here with you. I love what you're doing. I love the space you're in. And bravo to you for really stepping up and helping patients get better and find ways outside of this traditional, I call it, drug and drop, prescribe medications until they drop. It's so refreshing to be on with somebody who understands that. Let's get to the root of these problems. Let's treat patients the way that they need to be treated and give people as much information, just like you do on this podcast every time you're on.
Thank you. I believe there's been such a shift in our country where people, maybe the generation before us, they very much were taught that whatever your physician says is authority always, and you don't question it. I've seen such a change in that as a practitioner, and it makes me happy because we know never to leave our common sense at home. If someone keeps telling us that we need another drug to deal with the side effects of the other drug that we've been on, that is not common sense. We need to step back and figure out what is it that we need. Tell us about, you've built your whole career around preventative health, longevity, vitality, helping people live their best lives. What started that passion in you and how did that come along?
One thing that fuels most people is their own experiences in life. My very first job was in a nursing home as a nurse's aide. I was 16 and I was like, oh my gosh, I never, ever want to be in this situation. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be like this. That was eye-opening at a very young age. And I grew up with a mom who was a nurse and just kind of was around healthcare pretty much my entire life. I got to see the good and the bad of it, worked traditional HMO medicine in the back office, and really got to see how some people would come in and they could be 40 or 50 and they may seem like they're 20 or 30, while the same next room over, you've got a 40 or 50-year-old and they seem like they're 60. That really got a bit of a curiosity for me and also for the physicians I was working with at the time. 2 of the founders of that particular practice 20 years ago decided to start Executive Medicine of Texas, which is where I'm the CEO. They said, there's got to be a better way. You just named it, the baggie full of drugs, and you get one prescription, you get another one for the side effects. We call that the Human Chemistry Project. So many patients have been beholden to drug companies, even to the insurance company. In some ways, the insurance company really plays into this. We're not going to do this unless you've tried X, Y, Z. It's almost like they're promoting some of these other things that we know in the healthcare industry might not be the best option. And there's no cookie cutter algorithm that really fits patients. So the real goal for us at Executive Medicine was a personalized approach. How do we gather as much information as we can on a patient? We do it through half-day physical exams. And then what are their goals? Some people's goals may be very, very different. Not everybody wants to go climb Kilimanjaro. Some people just want to play with their grandkids, or they just want to have better focus while they're at work. Everybody has different things. Maybe they want to lose some weight. Whatever it is, there's a reason they seek out people like you or like us, and then to really listen to the patient, say, okay, what are your goals? Let's find out where you are, and then let's get a plan together going forward. And I just love that. I always say I am the luckiest girl in the world because I work with the most amazing practitioners. I have incredible staff and I love what I do.
That makes me so happy. We always talk in the functional medicine space, the holistic health space, about personalized medicine. And that ties into what is your why. You take it a little deeper. It's not only what is your why, it's more nuanced than that. It's what are your goals, so that when we combine that with your why, then we are designing a plan for you that's going to work for you. You're going to be excited about doing it, not thinking, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'll do it for a month and then forget about it. But when you tie it to those main priorities in people's lives, that's when you start to see the needle move and you start to see so much progress. And I bet that your office is a really fun place to be.
It really is. I think everyone enjoys it. We have a functional nutritionist on staff. And in addition to our MDs and DOs, we have a chiropractor and a neuromuscular massage therapist. We utilize things like red light therapy. It's not your typical, and people think about going to the doctor, you sign in, nobody looks you in the eye, and then they call your name, you come back, and they might ask you what you're there for, but you just filled out 10 pages explaining what you're there for. Then the doctor comes in and says, what are you there for? Like, anybody reading my paperwork? So
why did I take all this time to fill that out? Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a very different experience. And I think patients really, they respond to that. And really their why and our why, when they align, it's magic. They have the answers they are looking for, and we're able to do what we do best, which is prevention.
It's like you found each other. It's one of those aha moments. That person is looking at your practitioner, whoever they're meeting with, and saying, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And that's a great feeling. So let's talk about, you spend a lot of attention on brain optimization.
We do. Let me take you to why that kind of happened. It evolved for us. And everything we do in our practice really is a response to the patient needs or the things that we're seeing in the population. And one of the things that we saw was we do all this testing. We've got them running on a treadmill. Then we're testing for this. Then we're testing for that. We're drawing their blood. There's a lot going on during that half-day exam. And then the last thing we were doing was the cognitive assessment. I started to notice that we had a lot of people at that time. We were doing a Montreal cognitive assessment. We were seeing a lot of people that were scoring either borderline or just below. And I'm like, gosh, this is crazy. We see so many things like this. And people, they're really highly intelligent. So why is their cognition slipping? And this is even before COVID. Of course, we've seen more of that post-COVID. And a lot of that actually had to do with, as we dug a little deeper, we get their micronutrient tests back and we'd say, oh, well, we can explain this. You've got a lot of deficiencies. Oh, but I eat clean. And as someone who understands nutrition, that just because you eat clean or you think you eat the right things doesn't mean you're actually getting all the nutrients that your body needs. We discovered that, but then I also had this thought when we were about to do another expansion, because we've continued to expand our practice physically and to meet the needs and also to give more room for more physicians that have joined us. And I said, I think about what we put the patient through all day. And then we say, okay, now let's go do this test. And they're already kind of in a heightened sense of, oh my gosh, what if they find something? There's a lot of nerves that go along with people going to the doctor, even though we do everything to mitigate that. And so we put in a relaxation lounge and we say, okay, before we do your cognitive assessment, and we've changed the cognitive assessment, before we do that, we're going to put you in for 15 minutes of just deprivation. And we put them in, there's candles, the lights go out, there's a little fountain, no electronics. We really discourage any electronics the whole visit, but we say you absolutely can't take them in here. It's amazing how many of our patients fall into this incredibly deep sleep. They're like, I didn't even know I could sleep that hard. But it was really us saying, we're going to give you permission to block the world out and just take some time. The irony of that is what we found was that these patients were actually scoring better, scoring higher. In the meantime, we had changed the tests that we do. Now we do something called a CogniView, and it actually is kind of like a video game in a sense, but it learns the patient, and then they do puzzles and do things on that. And it tests all kinds of things, executive function, how different parts of the brain are working. And that's really what led us into, okay, there's a bigger problem going on in society. How can we identify exactly what's going on with people's brains? And then what do we do about it? Because just being able to tell somebody, yep, you got a problem with your brain, but we don't have a solution for them, I think that's worse. Maybe it is better you don't know if we can't tell you how we're going to fix it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is amazing. What have you found in addition to micronutrient deficiencies and just brain overload? What else have you found are some commonalities in people that they think they're functioning on all cylinders, but testing is revealing that there's some slippage? What are you finding are some of the causes?
One of the things we did with this is we said, okay, how can we dig a little deeper? So we started doing brain mapping, which is a QEEG. And really what it does is it looks at a visual representation of the brain. What's going on inside the brain? What parts are overactive, underactive? And it tells us a much bigger and better story. And the irony is, as we talk to the patient about the results, we actually find that it matches up almost exactly. And funny thing, how this came to be is as we were trying to decide what to do, a colleague of mine said, have you thought about doing brain mapping? I was like, no, but maybe we should look into that. He said, well, let me take you over to this neurologist office friend of his. And he said, we'll map your brain. You can kind of see what it's about. And this guy was a firm believer in brain mapping. I said, okay. So I went over to this office because we are really good at before we put a patient through this. What was the experience like? Did I find value in the information? And did it change an outcome for me? And if those are the answers, then that's something we would likely bring into the practice. So I went in to have my brain mapped and I did the whole thing, put the thing on my head. There's a whole bunch of things they ask you to do while this cap is on your head and they're following the waves of the brain and such. And then the neurologist said, give me about 30 minutes. I'm going to interpret it and then we'll sit down and I'll talk to you. I had my husband with me. He's a physician. And I said, you got to come check this out. We sat down at that table and he looked at me and I looked up at the screen. I saw a lot of red in a particular area. He looked over at me. He said, I'm going to ask you a personal question. I said, okay. He said, have you had something very traumatic happen to you recently? And I just start bawling. And I'm like, yeah, my sister died like 2 weeks ago. And he said, if you've been having trouble finding your words or doing certain tasks, maybe math, I'm crying. I'm like, how did you know this? I was putting on my brave face back at work and all that. And it was just incredible to look up at the screen and go, holy cow. And he said, this is what we see in grief, especially in complicated grief. And it was weird, but it also was very enlightening and almost a relief because I was like, am I getting Alzheimer's? Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I think? Why can't I just focus and get to work and get down to it? And that was a game changer for me. And then he said, well, there's something we can do called neurofeedback that'll actually help heal the brain. And I'm like, I'm in. That was how brain mapping got into our practice. Now we use it not just for grief recovery. We've seen it work really well for ADHD in kids. We've seen it do tremendous things with traumatic brain injuries, people that are in car accidents that maybe they didn't even have a traumatic brain injury, but now they have anxiety issues. They're kind of afraid to drive. It happens a lot when people are in car accidents. They get behind the wheel and then they find that they're just so tense and so nervous driving again and just kind of hypersensitive. Every time they think a car is coming up beside them, they might hit the wheel like overcorrect, which puts them at risk for another car accident. So this was an interesting thing for us to utilize within our practice. Then we can match up what happened on the cognitive view, what do we see on the brain mapping, how does that correlate with the patient's experience and their history, which a lot of times like-minded really come out when you're looking at it and you say, okay, what's going on? Are you feeling anxious? Because your brain shows you're really anxious. A lot of these people, they're CEOs, they're high profile people, and they are telling the world they're fine. So we offer a safe space for them to come in and go, you know what? No, I'm not fine. And we're like, we know because we see it here and we're going to help you. So that's kind of the story of brain mapping and how that came into our practice.
So a lot like your story, the CEOs or anybody, what we tend to, when we're in survival mode, I have seen and have experienced myself that we discount it to the point that we deny it because we have so much to do and we're high achievers and we just think we're putting it on a shelf and it'll take care of itself. And we keep going. And it sounds to me like where you were and so many of your patients are.
Oh, yeah, so much. It's like, I don't have time for this. And our new line to our patients is, you don't have time to not deal with this because this will just get worse and worse. What we can fix in a short amount of time, if it's not addressed, it's going to take years to fix. So we can
Right.
either deal with it now. A lot of times they acquiesce. They're like, you know what? I do need to do this. But partially, I blame the world we live in. We have to be on our phones. We have to be on our computers. We're access 24/7 to the outside world and for the outside world to reach us. And that takes a toll on the brain. It takes a toll on the body. It definitely takes a toll on the spirit. How do we talk to our patients in a way that says, we want to look at everything that's going on in your life and we want to be able to help you with everything? This is why we're going to spend a lot of time together. But in the end, you're going to be better for it.
You are doing a great service by showing your patients a mirror of themselves. We become so desensitized to the role of electronics and all the things that are coming at us. We're desensitized. We're just doing that next thing without giving it any thought. And you are now holding a mirror up and saying, this is what your brain is telling us and your body. Now that you have this knowledge, you can take the blinders off and make different decisions that, some of those things you said, if you don't deal with them now, maybe would take years to reverse, or maybe they get to the point they're not reversible. The brain that's when we see people with significant cognitive decline. And that's a much different problem. I noticed very recently, it just hit me this morning, but I've been noticing that my kids will be multitasking with their phone. So we might watch a movie as a family when we're all together, but they're on their phone. And I'll say, are you watching this? Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I saw it. And I'm thinking, I woke up this morning and I thought, what is that doing to your nervous system?
Yeah.
Because even if it's, it's just this constant, like the phone is always like, I'm always checking it, even if it's for something as unimportant as social media, it just seems to be this program running in the background.
Yeah, we call this like the Dory effect because, on Finding Nemo, Dory just can't keep her attention. And it's really started with the pop-ups. It used to be that we would be on the internet and have these pop-ups, and our brain got desensitized to that. So we not only expected it, but we felt like we needed to respond. I mean, think back, way back, AOL, you've got mail. People would jump off their couch, run over, didn't matter what they're doing, run over, look on their computer, and like, oh, what is it? What is it? So we've become so reactionary. And now the apps ding on your phone, they ding at night. A lot of people forget to just turn off all these alerts, and then it's dinging at night. They'll even get up to check it. Worst thing you can do. But it's really a sad situation that we find ourselves in. Much like your kids try to watch the show, they're on their phone and say, oh no, I'm watching the show. Multitasking is the biggest lie we have ever told ourselves. And it really entered into the workforce as almost like a badge of honor. Look at me, I can do 5 things at once. Oh my gosh, you have the job. And it's not true, because you become a jack of all trades and a master of none. The brain cannot truly multitask. It runs one function at a time. If you have to focus on something, whether it's reading something, watching something on TV, if it's focusing, it doesn't focus on 2 things. You're switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we see that you end up getting anxiety from this because the brain is on overload. It's not connecting properly. The synapses are just firing left, right, and center. And you're pretty soon just exhausted. This is how people become so exhausted by 4 o'clock. Some people by 2 o'clock. I wrote an article about decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is affecting all of us because when your phone dings, you have to decide, am I going to answer it? Then you're going to read it. Then you're going to decide, do I want to read this? Do I like this person? Do I not like this person? Is it I want to do this right now? Then you read it. Then you have to decide, am I going to do something with this or not? Once you're done with that, you go back to what you were doing. So maybe that was, okay, I was on my computer. Your computer, you're making decisions. And then you get the little thing that comes up that shows, oh, you have another message. You see it come up, they're scrolling or they're dinging. Outlook does this all day long, and dings and dings. And then you're like, oh, I think I just heard a text come through. And then you go and you check your text. This is what you do all day long. Now somebody calls and says, hey, what's for dinner? Or you want to go out. By 10 o'clock in the morning, you may have made 2,000 tiny micro decisions. And that decision fatigue is so taxing on the brain. And we didn't used to have this. This is when people say, when I go on vacation, I can think so clearly. And that's your normal self. It's just you're not allowing yourself to live in that state anymore. You're in a state of constant response. I have to respond to this, I have to respond to that constantly.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have the bio things. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Should I go now? Should I wait? Maybe I should finish this article here. Let me just finish typing this last paragraph first. And I see you smiling, so I'm sure you can relate to this so much, and we all can, right?
Oh, for sure. I learned way too late to turn off all email, turn off my phone, or turn off the notifications on my phone when I'm trying to work on a project. I spent a couple years working really hard and thinking, why do I feel like I'm spinning my wheels? Like I'm working hard, long
Right.
hours on this business. And of course, there were many more things involved than just my phone and my email. But it took me a while to figure out, just shut them off. Don't even look at them. Block your time and
Yeah.
turn all those distractions off. It is amazing how much more you get done and how much sharper you are when you turn those things off and just focus on that one thing. So that's one brain myth, right? One brain myth is I can multitask, and you know, I hear you saying that's not true at all. We just very quickly shift, and then we can't go deep onto something because we're still like on the surface, like, oh, I might have to make another decision.
Right.
What's another brain myth that you think is pretty common that would be helpful for our listeners to unlearn?
Well, I think a lot of us, and some of this kind of goes back to even commercials, that we saw as young adults or as children, this is your brain on drugs. And be like, oh, you have a brain. It's great until you screw it up. And yes, drugs does that to your brain. But the message behind that and the true scientific belief was that as we age or as we do things to our body, or even if we have an injury, we see this with stroke victims, traumatic brain injuries, concussions, things like that. It used to be if you damage your brain, it's damaged. But that's not true. And we now know, because we have functional MRI, we use it in a lot of the teaching hospitals, we can actually see the brain working in real time. We now know that the brain actually heals itself. There's something called neuroplasticity. So you can work your brain out like a muscle. You can do things that are going to actually help your brain relearn, help your brain train, help your brain grow. We see, like with exercise, that you can repair your brain and you can increase your cognitive function. There's so much to the brain that maybe we take for granted. With neurofeedback, even the way neurofeedback works with the brain is just tremendous. How we take someone who has severe anxiety, maybe something terrible happened in their life, we hook them up and play this music. We all hate static, right? If you've ever been in the car and the radio doesn't come in, or you go through the mountains, you're like, oh my gosh, turn it off. That's our first response, like, oh, I can't take it. So the music plays, and whenever the synapses aren't connecting, right? Whenever within the brain there's a disconnection, then there's a static that sometimes isn't audible. Sometimes patients can hear it, sometimes they can't. When I went through my neurofeedback, the interesting thing was I couldn't hear it until several sessions in. And also, I'm like, oh, I can hear that. But it was because so many others have been repaired that now I could notice it. But what happens when you get in this anxiety state or this grief state, we're just on autopilot. We don't hear it, we don't know it. But the brain gets rewarded for not having static. So that's how this system works. It's brilliant science, and it works so well. And there's so many ways that we can help ourselves. Unfortunately, in your practice, a lot of patients, they go to their practitioner and they're like, oh, you're depressed, you're anxious, here's a drug. And then they give them a drug, and then they gain weight, and then they have memory problems, and then they're moody, and then their sex drive is gone, and then they have a whole lot more problems than just their anxiety at that point. But their anxiety's gone to a whole nother level because of all of these other problems. So I think that really educating the public that if you suffer from things like anxiety or grief or brain injury, there's so many things that we can do that are not purchased at a pharmacy.
Yeah, I want to ask you about some of those things, but let's talk about that neurofeedback process a little more. Take us through that. What is that like? Do you put headphones on? What is the process you go through?
So there's some electrodes that go on, there's some groundings that go on the ear, and then you listen to music. And it literally is playing music and recording your brain waves. It's looking for places where it's not really hearing or connecting. And then it creates this little static sound. I didn't hear it in the beginning, and then the end, I'm like, oh, it's 3 seconds. So yes, I've been doing that all along. It's just that you didn't know it. And then pretty soon, the amount of times it has to do that just get fewer and fewer. We see a lot of NFL, retired NFL. And so we see a lot of people that have had brain injuries and suffered multiple concussions. It's amazing how quickly they can recover some of that function. We had one guy, and he's like, I'm buying the machine for my house. Because we're like, you go through all the sessions because you don't know, it's changed my life so much. He actually bought a medical grade one and put it in his house. And, we taught him how to use it. He's like, this is a game changer for me. I have my life back. He's long been retired. And it was the first time somebody talked to him about something besides medication.
That's amazing. So as the music is playing, those places are found where the neurons just aren't.
Where the synapses are not connecting.
Yeah. So then when that static comes, does that then help to repair those?
Yeah, because your brain focuses on that. There's something wrong here. There's something wrong here.
It has to fix it. It decides I have.
And it goes back to that neuroplasticity. We have an incredible ability to heal ourselves. We've seen this in so much research over the years where people, even things like laughter, there's been the laughter studies. I'm sure you've studied those. It's fascinating how they could take people who were very, very ill or even had cancer. They could, and I don't know if they would still do the same studies the way they did them then now, but they would take people like cancer and they would say, okay, you're going to watch shows while you're in for your treatment. They would have those people watch drama, heavy shows, things that really weigh on the heart or stressful or action or whatever. And then they took a subset of people and said, you're only going to watch comical things. And these people were laughing all the way through the treatments. But what they found was that the survival rate in the people who laughed through their treatment, the people who actually were not stressed more by outside forces, but were using laughter and dopamine that was happening inside the brain, obviously because they're laughing, that they were healing themselves. There's so much research on healing through laughter and positivity. It's mind-boggling, regardless of where you are on your spiritual path. I mean, some of this is biblical, that if you focus on the stress, you'll be stressed. It's bad for the body. But if you give these things up and you don't focus on them, it's so much better for the body, the mind, and the spirit. Science is just catching up with that.
It is. And it's aligning with that biblical principle. Laughter's the best medicine. And think upon these things. And it's, whatever is good and true and right and excellent and all those things. But when we focus on that, that's also what we become. To your point, Judy, there is a great book, and I know you know this, but for our listeners, there's a great book from Norman Cousins called The Anatomy of an Illness, and he healed himself with laughter. It's a delightful read because you see him becoming victorious over illness, a terrible illness, and how he did it. This is why we do what we do, because we get so excited about the success stories and we see that people can completely transform their lives with a lot of things that are free that you can do at home. And then you're bringing in amazing technology that I haven't heard of. Now I want to come to Texas in the worst way. But let's talk about, give us 5 daily habits everyone could adopt to improve brain function.
These are easy and almost elementary, but I think if people understand the why, I mean, all the time you hear doctors say, you need to exercise, you need to exercise, you need to exercise. Well, what the research now shows us is that true exercise, if you get a good cardiac workout, it could be a brisk walk. If you're brisk walking for 30 minutes a day, it is better than taking a Prozac. The studies are there. Exercise versus these antidepressants. And exercise, hands down, won time and time again. And that was using real data, not just questionnaires, looking at what's going on with the brain in these two scenarios. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you get on these antidepressants, you're also causing micronutrient deficiencies. They deplete your system of a lot of micronutrients that your body needs to recover and to have a healthy brain. The other thing, and this might surprise some people, is to avoid at all costs artificial sweeteners. They're outlawed in so many countries. Years ago, when this even started to become a thing, we were up at Harvard and we were, myself and the founding physicians, listening to a guy who was doing some research on this. And he showed us this incredible video. One thing that was fascinating is myself and the founders were up at Harvard and we heard about a study, and the guy who was actually doing the research was showing a video about this. And we're talking about the artificial sweeteners in the brain. He took this maze and he put these mice in this maze. And he showed that they could find their way through the maze, they could find their way to the food, they could find their way to all the things they were doing, the bells and this, that. And they had found their path, like they had a way that they had memorized behavior and really good at it. He introduced into half of those mice artificial sweeteners. He introduced aspartame, and then he showed us the video of what happened. The half that didn't have the artificial sweeteners still went through the maze, found their way in through the maze, did all the things that they had been doing in the previous video. The half he introduced to aspartame were so confused. They were bumping into the walls of the maze. They were turning around, going the other direction. They looked lost. They looked confused. And he said, this is what's going on in our human brains. It was the biggest eye opener ever. But it wasn't just what was going on in the human brain. It was the gut and the brain connection. And this was really the pioneering research behind that whole microbiome and how it affects the brain, and the relationship to even things like bipolar disorder when it came to the brain and how the brain is working versus what's going on in the gut. And if you change the gut, it affects the brain. It was fascinating research. And now we just know so much more.
So I didn't know. I know that artificial sweeteners are neurotoxic. That is hands down. You're preaching to the choir. I can't tell you how often that is my soapbox. Do not drink diet anything or eat diet. Right.
Or toothpaste. It's in.
It is chewing gum.
Children's medicine.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Oh, you have to be a defensive shopper. You have to look at ingredients. You can't look at the front. It's just marketing. But back to what you had shared with us, I did not know that was the beginning research for the gut-brain connection. We know that when the gut is off, the brain is off. We know if you have leaky gut, you have leaky brain. But I didn't realize that was the start. So that is fascinating.
It is really amazing. You know, now we know things like MS dramatically made worse by artificial sweeteners.
So I have a story about that.
Tell it.
I have a friend who was diagnosed with MS, and she drank Diet Coke all day long. She drank them every day, all day long. And she got diagnosed with MS, and the doctor wanted to put her on a very heavy MS drug. She took it home and talked to her husband about it and said, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. I see the downsides to this medication. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that.
Not this.
Not because she thought it was related, but she thought, I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to stop drinking diet soda. She stopped. At her follow-up appointment with that neurologist, he said, I can see the medicine's working. You're doing really well. He said, I never took the medicine. I only gave up my Diet Coke. And he was angry with her. He said, that has nothing to do with it.
No.
I know. All I know is that you told me I had MS and now I don't. I didn't take the medicine. So she is the poster child for
absolutely.
No diets, no artificial sweeteners.
Gosh, it just makes me so sad. We see this a lot where mainstream medicine really balk at some of these things that are out there. The research is out there. I mean, it's being done at Ivy League schools funded by the NIH. And I don't know if they're not keeping up with it or if they believe they have to get off their own Diet Cokes. I don't know. But you see this a lot where it's ignored and they're beholden to the drug reps and to, let me just do what I've always known. And maybe they're getting board certified again and again, which, you know, we just had one of our founding partners go through this. He was doing his boards and he's like, the right answer for them is the wrong answer. He's like, how is this? You know, it's the wrong answer.
I think that's terrifying.
It's frustrating, it's sad. But I think just like patients have to be their own advocates, practitioners have got to be continuously learning. Don't just look to your specialty, whether it's family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, whatever. Don't just look to that as your source of information.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a lot to be said about how certain things become answers on questions on these tests. I'm not going to get into it, but it was a real eye opener sitting with someone who's just so frustrated that if I treated my patients the way that the boards was telling me to treat my patients, half of them would be dead. And that's scary. It's a
Yes. And this is
scary
why
proposition.
it is scary. And this is why we see the sick get sicker.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing to lighten the mood a little bit is water. We take for granted the importance of water on the brain and how much of the brain is actually made up of water. When we dehydrate the brain, we see things like memory loss. We see things like anxiety. We see inability to just focus on tasks, overall fatigue. There was a show, gosh, I don't even remember how long ago it was, but it affected my kids who are now all grown and married. So that tells you how long ago it was. But it was about these kids going through spelling bees and, the training and the parents and the way they were with the kids. And there was this one dad, this Indian guy, and he just cracked me up. He had a really smart daughter. She's a really good speller. But every time she'd spell a word, he made her take a drink. He's like, you have to hydrate your brain. You don't need to put it down and take a drink, take a drink, take a drink. So it became a joke in our house, the kids are like, I'm like, oh, you have a test, here's your breakfast, take a drink, take a drink. I mean, it became like a thing. But then the more we looked into, and my kids did their own research, I probably should make sure I drink like 8 to 10 ounces of water before I walk out the door to school. Then I should have one at 10 o'clock. They have one with lunch. They realized there was something to this. The girl won the spelling bee, so that probably has something to do with it. So, but it was amazing to see a parent be so proactive with their child and just say, "This is good for your brain." And how simple is that?
So simple and necessary. Our brain is, how much of it is water? So
I think it's like 80%. I don't remember the exact percentage, but I feel like it's like 80% is water.
I feel like you're right. It's big, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So what are a couple others? So we have hydration, we have no artificial sweeteners, we have physical activity regularly, daily.
You absolutely got to move.
Oh, we got to get that blood moving through there.
For sure.
Bring down our sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic. There's so many things we don't even know. But what are a couple other of your favorite suggestions that people can take and start doing for their optimal brain health?
Well, I like to say we should all be tasting the rainbow, and I'm not talking about Skittles. We really need to be looking at the color of the food we're eating, blueberries and raspberries and things that are super colorful, carrots, get all those colors in there and avoid the things that are white or brown. They don't really feed the brain. So we know that the nutrients are really in the things that are the color. That really is what gives it color. And I love to tell this story because now, I wrote out of several of the books that I wrote. My favorite book by far is Love, Life, and Lucille. It is a memoir I wrote about my time with Lucille Fleming, who was a centenarian. I met her just after her 100th birthday. What a firecracker. I mean, oh my gosh. I was working on a book called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100 Healthy and Wise. I started interviewing people over 100. And I loved everybody I interviewed. But man, I really love Lucille. She and I became like attached to the hip. She became my best friend. She went on a book tour with me. I flew around with her. And she's over 100. And she and I just had the most incredible time. But I got to really understand what it took to not just live that long, but her mind was sharp. It was so sharp. We would go to the grocery store and she'd say, okay, give me a name. And I'd say a name and she'd rattle off the phone number. And then she's like, okay, give me another name. And she'd rattle off phone number. She said, the worst thing they ever did was get these phones where you just press the name. She says, this is how I keep my brain sharp. Every day she'd recite all these different phone numbers. And it just kind of became like a game. But she knew that a few things out of this. She knew that when we were at the grocery store, she was always getting healthy stuff. She grew up on a potato farm, but she ate more blueberries, she said, than anybody in all of Canada, because that's where she was from. And then she exercised her brain. And, where things like Sudoku are good, finding other ways. She played duplicate bridge after she was 100. And she would say, I don't play bridge, I play duplicate bridge. It's much harder. So, and friendship is really good because we engage with one another. They've done some studies now that when we're talking on a screen, our brain is working very differently than if you and I were sitting in the same room, we were having a conversation. I'm seeing you in 3D. My brain is taking in completely different messages, not 2D, but 3D. So having those true friendships where you're sitting across the table from somebody and you're having these conversations, you're hugging one another, touch is another important thing for the brain. I think Lucille has so many lessons she taught us about the brain and how to live a long time. She died just shy of her 104th birthday, and her mind was good until the day she died. So it's a good lesson for me and for all of us to look at people that have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and say, how did they do it? What were the important things? And how did they keep their brain sharp? It's a beautiful thing.
That must have been such an incredible friendship.
Yeah, it really was. I say I'm on this continuous, everlasting book tour. The book came out in April 2020, if you can believe it, the absolute worst time. So the book tour got canceled. It was just insane what had happened. I had a little bit of a pity party, like a 2-day pity party, maybe not even 2 days, maybe it was a day. But I was like, oh my gosh, all these events. I had something with the Texas Rangers. I had something at the Four Seasons, a national book tour. And now I got a garage full of books because the speaking events are all canceled. I've got all of, what am I going to do? I really believe that I was led by God to do this one thing, and God and Lucille together. I was done with my pity party and I went around to these independent living centers where people were living alone. I dropped off cases of books and I said, find people that are alone and now they have somebody. And you know what was crazy about that is I think that was the best book tour ever because I got these letters, emails, and calls from these people saying, you gave me somebody to sit in my apartment with, and that exercise, it paid back tenfold. I'm still on this book tour. I mean, I had book clubs calling saying, hey, if we do your book, will you come? And I've flown out here and there and everywhere to these book clubs. Sometimes I bring memorabilia, I'll bring some stuff from Lucille, and they always ask me, how do I keep my brain healthy? How do I keep it sharp? So everybody's interested in that. But it's amazing to me when you look at somebody who's so full of life and say, what can we learn from them? Mm-hmm. And we all should be asking ourselves, who do we know that we can learn something from? And what do we have that we can give? Just us here on this podcast talking to others, we have information to give. We have something to give. And as a society, if we could be more givers, I think it would go a long way.
Yeah, that pay it forward concept.
It
helps the payer more than the recipient. It helps the person giving. I never believed it when I was a kid. My mom would always say, it's better to give than receive. I was like, no, bring it on. But now as an adult, I see that she was absolutely right. Yes. And you've given us so much today. I'm going to link all of your books in the show notes. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with our listeners today as we wrap up?
Well, I just want to leave this one thought, and this is just a way for me to continue to share the legacy of Lucille. And that is, wherever you are in your life right now, whatever age you are, whatever stage you are, whatever part of your health journey you're on, if you're alive and you have a breath in you, you have a purpose. So find your purpose.
Yes, that is a great note to end on. Honestly, this life is a one-ticket ride, and we're the ones who get to design the ride. But if we just passively let it come to us and check our phone every time it dings and our emails and everything, we're letting it slip away. It's a beautiful journey. Yes, find your purpose. I love that. Well, Judy, this has been so much fun. Thank you for coming on today and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
It's been a pleasure. You're so easy to talk to. I can see why your listeners and your viewers follow you. You're fun. And I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
I love what you're doing too. Thank you. Okay. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. I will be back talking with you next week. And until then, stay pretty well. Bye.